Dreaminkitty here. So for today I just wanted to try my hand at making a small tutorial for something that you could do on SAI, which is a really great program, very intuitive, but what I wanted to show everyone was how I go about inking and coloring in SAI using layers and the fill bucket tool, which is a really cool tool. A friend of mine wanted me to show them how to color digitally, especially how to color so quickly using the fill bucket, the paint bucket. So I thought I'd make my first video on YouTube on exactly that. So first, of course, you start with the sketch layer. Then when I'm satisfied, I go one layer above and start with the inking process. Since I'm doing a coloring tutorial specifically on how to use the paint fill bucket to color most of the stuff I wanted to make the picture something simple, so I drew kind of a chibi-ish version of my character Dream resting on some clouds. Like, it almost looks like she's in a pool. For the inking, of course, I go a layer above. I like to use the regular default pen tool, and I usually use size 4, depending on how big the canvas is. One thing that I want to mention that makes inking easier, especially in SAI, is a built-in little device in the top right-hand corner, the stabilizer, that makes the lines a lot smoother, without as much lag as if you, unless you wanted to set it up high or... Oh my god, I'm messing up. Oof, sorry for that. But yes, the stabilizer, it's kind of like the lazy hand or the pull string tool in Photoshop, except it's not as laggy as Photoshop can sometimes be with that tool, or you don't have to wait a few seconds to see where your line is going to go. It's much more intuitive. I generally set it to 15. I used to have it set to S1. If you're like a beginner, you might want to set it to that, but it can be a little bit laggy, but it'll make your lines really smooth. Forgive me for all the ums and uhs. Well, I almost forgot that it is really important with the way that I'm coloring that you make sure that all of the gaps in your drawings are closed. If you do leave like a little bit of a gap, it's okay, but like for the most part, try to make sure that the lines are all closed off. I'm just trying to make a little cloud background here. Another thing that I like to do with my line art is I'll use different layers for each of the different things that I'm line arting, or that I'm inking, sorry. For example, I'll put the hair on a different layer, the main body inking on a different layer, the eyes and facial features on a different layer. Just in case I want to fix something later, it makes it so much easier to go back and erase what I messed up on, like I'm doing here. And then when I'm happy with it, I'll either group it all together or I'll merge all of the layers together. Now, for the coloring, first I set the layer that my line art is on to selection source. As you can see that I just did, I went and grabbed a source for the colors, another picture of this character that I did. But selection source, then I make sure to set my fill bucket to selection source, then my detection mode to transparency, as you see here, this will allow for the fill bucket to base the selection off of the transparent or non-transparent pixels, so that when you fill the space, it won't go past wherever there are connected lines, as you can see here. Next I'll make another layer and below the line art layer and just start filling away with the fill bucket. Another thing too is I like to set the transparency difference, it's the little option at the bottom, to about plus minus 5 pixels, so that if there are any small gaps that I missed, the line art will still fill in the area that I want without flooding over into other areas of the picture. Now I'm just doing some cleanup work. I like to do each of the colors that I'm working with on a different layer, so I'll have like say her shirt on one layer, hair on another layer, skin tone on a different layer, and then of course all of the different colors into the background on different layers as well, like I'm doing here right now. This helps me kind of keep things separated and allows me to adjust things easier however I want. Some people will keep everything, like some people will put things on one layer or they'll merge the layers afterwards, but I'm not really one to do that. Kind of wanted to try and add little different colors to the clouds to give them some more depth. Just kind of like blurring some areas to make it look softer. For the lines of the background, I like to give them a color of their own to sort of soften the look out of the image and separate the background from the character. I don't do this for every picture, but I'm doing it here. In order to color just over the line art, I'll make a new layer just above the line art and create a clipping group. In Photoshop, I think it's the same thing as the clipping mask, but basically what it does is it will clip to the layer under it, and it'll allow for those pixels only to be colored in, so you can be pretty messy with your coloring or just set the fill bucket back to working layer and fill the whole picture with whatever color you want the line art to be. Some people like to pick a gray or brown color, but I like to just take a darker, slightly darker color than the background color, or primary background color, and use that. I use the same clipping groups for doing the shading for my characters. First, you'll want to pick a light source before you shade for the picture. I'm going for a light source that's on the top left-hand corner of the image, hitting about between her ears, so the light will be coming from that direction. Anything that might be blocking the light will have more shading in those areas than others. Rather than shading in black, I will usually use a contrasting color to what the primary color of the character is to give it more interest, or use varying shades of the most prominent background color, like I'm doing here, and use that. For this picture, the background is kind of a purplish periwinkle color, so I'm going for a purplish kind of indigo shade. I'll generally do a mixture of soft and cell shading, so there's going to be like a lot of soft areas and harder, crisp lines, and then I'll try to shade this way consistently for the whole of the picture. I like to shade on the areas, like each of the layers that I'd done for all of the colors, I'll shade those individually. So right now I'm doing her tail and hair. Can be kind of messy with my coloring when I know I'm gonna blur it later. For the highlights, I'll generally use white or a lighter color, or sometimes a contrasting color to the character if it's a nice warm color. In this case, I'm using white because it's a cooler environment, and I'll just make a few highlights, soften them out with a blur tool, and then a few cell shade highlights. So those will stay pretty sharp. And then to emphasize the color, sometimes I'll take that same shading color and go back over a portion of the picture with the most shade and go over it. And then soften that out with a blur. Put all those layers back on top. I'll generally use the same color for shading about the entire picture, or different different shades of that one color. So again, I'm using another indigo kind of purple for shading her skin, and I'll do the same thing for her sweater. And the same exact method for highlighting as well. Trying to make the sweater look a little bit softer than the hair, and not so shiny. Another interesting thing I've done to make the picture look a little softer is take some of the color of the skin and using it to highlight some of the hair for the bangs, and as well as the sleeves for the sweater, and kind of use it as if it's being, or as if the sweater is reflecting back some of that color. It makes the whole picture to me look a little bit softer, especially the hair. emphasizing more of that purple color. I had a little bit of difficulty figuring out how I wanted to highlight the sweater so that it didn't look super shiny, and just kind of ultimately went with larger, rounder shapes for the highlights and just kind of making it look less like a highlight and more like the kind of base color for the sweater. Now I'm adding little sparkles to the sweater, and I'm going to be adding sparkles to the hair, because this character has lots of sparkles in her look. Now I'm dialing back some of the sparkles, it's a little bit too much. I did a lot of copying and pasting. Now I'm finally going back and coloring the line art for the character herself, which I'm using a darker color than the line art I had done for the background. It's going to be another one of the dark indigo colors, and I'll kind of be like mixing it with a little bit of a darker bluish color. And then I'm going in and adding all of these layers to a group. What I normally do is I'll add all of these layers, or I'll make a group first and then add these layers to it, or start working on the layers in the group for coloring so that I can eventually close the group and not have so many layers showing all at once. So I'm just trying to do some color adjustments. I wound up not liking any of those, and what I decided to do instead was add like a vignette to the whole picture as a final touch, and kind of darkening the picture a little bit. It's a really messy one. And a little more blue. And it's done. I hope you guys enjoyed my video, and I hope I was able to teach you guys something new about SAI, which is a wonderful program, by the way. If you're having any questions, or if you have any topics that you might like to see me make another video of in the future, leave a comment. If you liked the video, leave a like. Thanks for watching, and bye for now!